That's right. My posture is usually terrible. I kind of cringe when I watch back on these. I'm usually like hunched over, or I lean back, or the key is not paying attention to the fact there's a camera there. And oh, look, we're live on Facebook. That's Ike from Buckledown Brewery. It is Car Con Carne, still in quarantine. Quarantine Con Carne, sponsored by C&H Financial Services. I'm going to switch to this view so we can get both of us talking at the same time. Buckledown is 8700 West 47th Street in Lyons, buckledownbrewing.com. And Ike, as I on Car Con Carne have talked a lot about independent breweries over the past few days, one of the first questions I get to, and I'll ask you, how did Buckledown, or how is Buckledown continuing to manage through COVID-19?
Right. So we've been a to-go only operation since, I guess, the day before St. Patrick's Day. So I think it was March 16th when kind of the shelter-in-place order came in. So we moved pretty quickly to go to a to-go only option. Now, we were nicely set up to do that because we do a lot of beer in cans, unlike I think some smaller breweries who we feel terrible for, who are stuck, serving growlers. We were able to kind of flex really quickly to selling out of our big overhead doors, and really the big struggle at that point was it was freaking cold out. So we had to put on the winter hats and the gloves and kind of get out there and get it done. I got to say, our customers and really the craft beer enthusiast has been unbelievable throughout all this. I mean, I guess you can look at it and say, well, what is there to do but drink beer? Because everybody's stuck at home with nowhere to go and nothing to do. But they certainly didn't go to drink Budweiser or Miller. So, I mean, it's been an amazing outpouring for us. And really the last three-ish months have really flown by.
That's great to hear. And that is a common theme I'm hearing is local communities have made a point of supporting their restaurants, their breweries, their retail. That's encouraging to hear. So here you are, I wouldn't say on the other side of it, but edging toward the other side of things.
Yeah.
That's all.
Oh, sorry.
So let's get a little history of Buckledown. You and your business partner, Sean, basically built this facility from scratch, the facility you're in right now, right?
Yep.
Which is like super handy beyond being handy.
YouTube clips and Harbor Freight tools come in real handy sometimes. But yeah, we opened back in 2013. So now we're probably a little bit of the elderish statesman of Chicago craft beer, being around for coming up on 7 years now.
That's awesome. And before that, this is a common thread, home brewing. You had the bug from many years ago and that was your passion, and that led to where you are today.
That's it. And I got lucky enough. I think you might have done an interview with Haymarket recently, mm-hmm. Right? So I got lucky enough that I in my former office job, we worked right across the street at Halstead and Randolph, and kind of watched as Haymarket got built. And I'd been homebrewing for a long time before that. And it was amazing. Pete Crowley over there, who is like a Chicago brewing luminary, did a ton to help us. Took me under his wing, kind of showed me the ropes of how this happens on a bigger scale, and was really invaluable to how we got started. And I think everybody needs, you need those helping hands and that community to kind of support you. And it's kind of odd. You would think that it would be a little more cutthroat because there's a ton of breweries, but it's not really like that. It's sort of frenemy. We're friends, but we also compete. And I think it's a nice dynamic, and hopefully we can keep that way.
And that's what I've heard from a lot of other brewers is it is supportive. And I think there is something to the idea that if one of you is successful, you're all successful. By supporting each other, you're helping the industry.
Absolutely.
Because if someone is turned on to craft beer in the West Loop and they live out by where you are in Lyons, I had craft beer at Haymarket. Let's give Buckledown a shot. It's just everyone wins when that awareness and that passion goes up on a big level.
Absolutely. And I think, craft beer drinkers are kind of promiscuous. They like to get around. They like to try new flavors, try new places. So you're absolutely right. That rising tide definitely does float.
That's the metaphor I was looking for. That's the metaphor I wanted. Thank you. I'm glad you're on the phone.
Going back, because I think everybody, it's so driven by new experiences, new flavors, new beers. I mean, just the theme of new is such an important thing for us right now. And I think all the breweries flagships continue to struggle. Everybody wants to try new stuff. They want to try beers that don't taste like anything they've had before. And I think necessarily to try those experiences, you've got to go to some different breweries and try some different stuff.
Well, it's kind of like being a music fan too. And I see this parallel over and over again. As a music fan, you want to be plugged into all the cool new shit. You want to know what your friends don't know. So there's like a pioneering aspect to being a craft beer fan. Like, oh, I tried Ha Cha Cha at Buckledown. Oh, you haven't tried it yet? Oh, really? You should try it. There's almost like a pride in ownership or being the first one to plant your flag.
100%. Yep, I think that's right on. That's something I think we forget about sometimes is that, yeah, that's a big thing to be that pioneer, to be the guy that shows up at the social distance gathering with a growler of something nobody's ever had before. That's a nice place to be.
Absolutely. Going back to the build out of your facility, it's lovely. You can't really tell right now because it's a little shrouded in darkness. But when you took the space over, it needed a little TLC, didn't it?
Absolutely. So it's kind of just a shell of a space, really. There was an auto shop that was here before, and there were still the lifts and everything when we first moved in. So there was a decent amount of demo that had to be done, and yeah, I mean it was a pretty rough space. I mean, if you haven't been here, the ceilings are beautiful. It's like exposed wood, but other than that, it needed a lot of help. Certainly to make it into a brewery in terms of infrastructure improvements. Putting in the new gas piping and new plumbing and all that sexy stuff. It needed all of that.
And for those who haven't been, you're easy enough to get to. I'd say you're probably not quite equidistant, but kind of in between Brookfield and Midway, kind of positioned between those two landmarks.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, we're minutes from 55 and First Avenue. I mean, it's a pretty easy trip, really coming from wherever you are because we're so close to 55.
And once Brookfield Zoo opens, take the kids to the zoo, stop by, grab some cans on your way home.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
I hope Brookfield Zoo opens. I just saw they laid a bunch of people off yesterday, which was very, very sad.
that is brutal. Let's talk about the thing that makes you who you are, Ike. Let's talk about the beer.
Yeah. So
if you're to summarize
right
your offerings.
Yeah, I think we do a pretty broad spectrum. Right now we've got about 15 beers on tap. We usually have between 6 and 10 different beers and cans. Personally, my passion are the classic styles. I love lagers. I'm drinking a Mexican style lager right now. I love English styles and things that nobody likes to drink right now are kind of what my jam is. But we do a lot of different stuff. So you mentioned Ha Cha Cha. That's a Mexican hot chocolate inspired milk stout that has cocoa nibs and ancho chilies and cinnamon and vanilla. It's a very delicious beer that doesn't really taste much like beer. Again, not sometimes they're beer flavored, sometimes they're not. We do hazy, so we do a ton of different beers. We try to make sure that even though my passion is for more classic styles, we also need to provide our drinkers what they're looking for. And we take a lot of pride in everything we do and the processes that we take to make quality beer. And I think they're pretty applicable across really any beer style you want to look at. So we do a big variety: hazy, stouts, barrel age, lagers. I mean, we do a little bit of everything.
All right. So here's my really basic question for you. What makes an IPA a hazy IPA?
Right. So yeah, I mean, if you go back to 2013, the hazy appearance in a glass was a real big no-no. I mean, we took a lot of steps early on to make sure our beer was as clear as it possibly could be, because that's what people wanted to be. Once Instagram kind of came on the scene, clear beer doesn't photograph nearly as nice as an orange hazy does. So again, to your point of being the pioneer, it's harder to broadcast all the cool stuff you're doing with a clear beer. It's just the way it is. So really what that haze is, it's like a protein and hop matrix. It's not a yeasty haze. It's a protein hop haze. So what we do for hazies is we use a ton of oats. That's A1 is it's a real proteinaceous, there you go, grain, and it tends to provide a lot of haze forming precursors to it. And then the second element is you got to dry hop it aggressively and ridiculously. So it's usually in a regular IPA, you'd throw dry hops in towards the end of fermentation after about a week. With these beers, you're adding dry hops during fermentation, and there's like some magic that happens between the hops and the yeast, and these permanent haze forming compounds kick out. And, that's the kind of, I guess, the technical side of it. But yeah, what makes a hazy too is it's just got to be super hoppy. It's got to be really rich and fruit forward and all those delicious things. And again, just changing over the last 8 years, it's not about those piney West Coast hops at all anymore. It's like how much fruity, pineapple-y, citrusy goodness can you get from those hops? That's really what drives things right now.
One of my favorite places in the near north suburbs is Few, the distillery, EQW. You make a beer called Irresponsible. I don't know why you'd call it that. It's only 11.1 APV, made in Few bourbon and rye barrels.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, that beer started out as a collaboration we did with Greenbush out in Southwest Michigan, and it was a beer called Reprehensible. Because their thing is kind of like anger. It's like one word, aggressive names. So we're like, why don't we name something reprehensible? That's pretty aggressive. And then we put it into rye bourbon. That started out as it's a red rye beer, and we put it into rye barrels, and that kind of just morphed into Irresponsible. It took reprehensible, and it became Irresponsible once it got barrel aged. That's a beer we haven't done in a little bit, but that's a real tasty one. Super unique. It's got a ton of rye, so it's got a spicy depth to it that's really good. And then it's the Few rye whiskey barrels that we use. Just again, it has that spicy oaky note to it. That's a lovely beer. It's a really nice one.
Lovely. Now, for a straightforward summer beer, sun's been out, blue skies everywhere. Love Tap.
Yeah, Love Tap's a great summer beer. It's an IPA, but it's not like a hop bomb. The hops we use is a hop called Cashmere, another one called Laurel, and then we use a hop out of New Zealand called Motueka. And they're not like real, I don't know how to describe it. It's a melony, floral kind of hop profile. It's a real nice, like sipping, easy drinker. It's not a hop bomb. It's about 6%. It's a great beer for the pool or for being outside. It's a real nice one.
Going back to the music analogy, there are some music nerds who will go to a show, and if there's a really good guitarist, they'll try to get the guitarist's attention as they're setting up instruments to talk about the different pedals and the way sound is routed through. Do you get guys like that who come in just listening to you talk about beer? Do you get guys talking about various hops and minutia?
Oh, absolutely, all the time. I've got some pen pals that email me pretty regularly with stories about the beers and what they're tasting. And it actually is really useful because sometimes those guys call out some really interesting stuff we hadn't considered before. But yeah, we absolutely have a subset. I would say, we've got a real broad customer base everywhere from like, blue collar people that work across the street all the way out to, lawyers or accountants from the city. We have a subset of like beer, like the real beer techie guys, but we don't get a ton of those, which is, I guess, a blessing and a curse because those guys are pretty important. They're the pioneers in a lot of cases.
Absolutely. All right. So Buckledown is at 8700 or 100 West 47th in Lyons. Your hours now are?
It's a little bit flexing right now, but we're still doing to go. We're building out our patio now. That's probably about a week and a half away from being a reality. So right now we do pick up during the weekdays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and then 4 p.m. to 7. So we've got kind of two different windows. And then on the weekends from 12 to 4.
Oh, right on. All right. So we can stop by on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to. I'm always here on Saturday, and I'm mostly here every day. So I'd love to have you stop by.
Fantastic. All right. We're going to stop the Facebook Live. Thank you, everybody, for watching there.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ike.
No problem, man.